in time, they can switch, right? So a good example is Apple, right? I mean, they started off as a pure hardware company. They still are, obviously. They still are.
Which Apple?
Apple. Yeah. So, but at the same time, a large source of their revenue, or a decent source of their revenue, comes from iTunes. Another source of their revenue comes from App Store. Right? And these are different, completely different, segments. So the business model evolved from a pure hardware company to a mix. So they said, in the end, iTunes' purpose is not to make money, of course. iTunes' purpose is to create the infrastructure for selling more Apple products. So they still kind of have, I would say, still the same business model, but with some modifications.
Well, I think they used to create money because they started selling songs for $1, and people could afford to buy songs on.
No, you're absolutely right. The initial idea was there. What I'm saying is, right now, the point of iTunes, I mean, if you follow it, they changed the model. So now it's subscription-based. It's Apple Music, and you pay it on annual subscription. And they're not making too much money on it. They introduced, the point is, having iTunes ties you to iPhone. So it's not that you need an iPhone to get to iTunes. See my point? Like Gillette, the good example of the different model in hardware is Gillette. Gillette sells their blade. I mean, the device is sold not too expensively. The problem is the blades, right? They make all the money on the blades.
Well, just to review the Nespresso coffee.
Yeah, Nespresso, same thing, right? But in Apple's case, it's different. They don't make money on subscription. They rather use subscription as something that ties you to the ecosystem. So vice versa. Gillette basically sells you, if it's an equivalent, Gillette would have sold you an iPhone for $5 and they charge you a premium for like subscription on Apple Music.
Frankly, I didn't check. You're saying that if I go through iTunes from PC, I won't be able to subscribe?
Maybe you can, but I don't know a lot of people who use it from a PC. From a PC, you usually use Spotify or Pandora or some other service. Why bother to make it such a complicated thing to go to an iTunes, through a PC or an Android?
Well, iTunes is on Android as well already.
I know, but like most people, they don't use iTunes and Android. Most people use Spotify. Most people use other services. Most notably Spotify.
Google Music.
Or Google Music. Exactly.
Or radio.
Sorry?
Radio.
Whatever, but not iTunes. iTunes is very connected to Apple. It's very, very, very well connected to Apple. So the point is, Apple creates the infrastructure so that it can sell its core products, which is the hardware. That's where they make money. Their marginality is on hardware, is not on software. Versus Google. I mean, Google makes money not on the phones. Google makes money on, they want to be in as many phones as possible. Because Apple actually, 90% of all of the mobile, of all of the smartphone profitability is one company, it's Apple. They have about 15% of revenues of all of the phones, but they have about 90% of all of the profits in smartphones. Because they are the only differentiated producer. Because of the closed ecosystem. So migrating, it's a choice. If you think about it, the competition, they're not substitutes. Oh, sorry, they're not competitors. So Apple and Android, or iPhone and then Samsung are not competitors.
I'm still not sure. Probably I will.
Okay, have you tried it? If you have a Mac, is PC, is Windows, is that a competitor or a substitute? switch from a Mac to a PC?
No.
If all of your software, everything is here, that's it, you're done. Right now with cloud, it's a bit easier, but think about it like 20 years ago. It's either or, right? It's either Windows or Mac OS. Once you make the choice, that's it, that's where you're going. There is no kind of, you cannot switch at any moment. Within Windows, you have Dell, HP, Compaq, you name it, right? That's competition. If you think about hardware, that's competition. HP competes with Dell, competes with everyone else. Apple competes with an ecosystem. So Apple stood, that's why they had some problems early in the days.
I just, since I somehow touched with
Sure.
Apple business.
Yeah, I'm very curious to hear your insights.
Yeah, I was monitoring all these changes, and at some point when they started selling iPod with songs, and it was a clear sign that Apple moves from hardware to retail. And then they produced iPod, iPhone, and iPad, and they, in fact, they killing the desktop solutions. They still continue MacBooks because people like them, but macOS products are declining.
Yeah.
And actually now they're introducing new software frameworks which give opportunity less and less qualified people to do programming, and they produce application for $1 and for up to $5, and they're pushing out serious developers from this business, and they're deeper in retail, in matches, speech
I'm not saying they have a right strategy.
And
I'm not sure.
They're actually getting 30% commission from developers who are selling their programs through Mac App Store, iTunes Store, and Mac App Store. And actually, that's pretty a lot, because if you have a million products, 100,000 products, or million sales for $1, and you're getting 30%, and I just got interested to see the reports.
App Store is profitable for sure. App Store is profitable, absolutely. But if you look at it, if you look at the sources of revenue, what's the biggest source of revenue? iPhone. iPhone. 60%, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 60% of the revenue is iPhone, or even more, 60 to 70%. Maybe look it up, but
anyway, Apple has more diversified source of income in comparison with Alphabet, Google.
Of course, Google is 90% search.
I believe they will change their model soon. They are already in position of Nokia.
Could be. We don't know. I mean, I'm not saying anything good or bad about Apple now. What I can say is, historically, the turnaround that Steve Jobs did was magnificent, was fantastic, and he did. It's both luck and and the right decisions, but he did the right things. And again, if you think about it, right, in terms of consistency, so going back to being consistent, right, it's all fits, and it's all about trade-offs. So did they? What was the Steve Jobs' original message in terms of in terms of iPhone? It's just one phone, right?
iPhone XR, iPhone XS, iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. But so now they're doing something different. I'm not sure whether it's a good thing, but the original point was no, it's just one device. It's a trade-off, and it's an expensive device. So we specifically don't want to make cheap devices. Can Apple do cheap devices? Of course. They tried it. And failed. In fact, 5C was the first one where they tried and they failed. Because it was inconsistent with Apple's positioning. Because people were like, cheap iPhone. Those two words don't go together. It's either iPhone or cheap. cheap iPhone is kind of like difficult to, it's like,
But people liked big screens, and so Apple had to go to big screens actually.
could be, again, I'm not in a position, you know, it's a topic for a, you know, really separate discussion. I'm not in a position to judge whether they're doing right or wrong thing. My personal opinion is they kind of, I think it's not about Apple per se. I think it's about industry in general. I think the smartphones kind of, it's a kind of a story of, yeah, like mobile phones. I think smartphones are close to the brink, you know, of extinction in the next few years. Maybe 5 years.
What will come next?
We'll see. But I think, I mean, you cannot, look, you cannot do much more than this. So like, look at the industry. They kind of, it's like small tweaks, you know, like removing the button, okay, nice, you know, but they kind of,
That's what they say in all the smartphone reviews. That
it's
it's
the
basically
shape, you know, the size, the screen resolution,
very small
processor.
incremental changes.
Exactly, small incremental changes. It's not like revolution, like, you know, iPhone 4, like first iPhone, and second, third. Each of them was a revolution. You know, it brought some really big changes to the market, right? So now, like, everyone is doing that.
Maybe
more or
they
less.
will create a battery that holds more than 1 day.
A real breakthrough. So, you know, I'm not worried about Apple. Like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you know, Apple is doomed. No, Apple is not doomed because they have more cash. You know, they have cash enough to buy all of the competitors combined. So yeah, they'll have like about $200 billion in cash, just in cash reserves. So I'm not worried about Apple at all. Seriously, they can last for some time. I mean, I don't know, but I think it's probably going to be embedded devices, most likely. I think still embedded, yeah, like glasses, like
smartphone devices.
Sorry?
Like watches?
Implanted, yeah, implanted, either implanted or stuff, you know, like Google's glasses,
home
whatever.
devices like voice.
Whatever it is. But I mean, yeah, the box, it's already kind of, yeah, it's as good as it's going to get. There is nothing more to it. How many of you know Southwest Airlines? Have you heard it?
Yeah.
So it's basically, this is the father of all budget airlines.
The father of Ryanair.
Yeah, in a way. Ryanair, Jet, EasyJet, etc. And so, if you think about it, Southwest appeared in 1970s, just after the industry got deregulated, and you saw the airline industry. I mean, not kind of the most fantastic industry to be in, to be honest. But somehow Southwest manages to still be one of the world's most profitable airlines. So how do they do that? And again, you know, they aligned their internal and external positioning. So they said, okay, who are we focusing on? Specifically, we'll be targeting this group of customers. You know, we are not going to go after business class. We're not going to be targeting, you know, people who want to spend a lot of money. We'll be targeting price-sensitive guys, so people who seek out deals in Walmart, people who seek out car deals, etc. And we'll give them just a very simple, reliable, frequent flyer product. That's the value proposition. So how do we support this value proposition? Well, first we say, okay, we'll do mid-sized cities, because most of the cities, kind of most of the airlines, big airlines, they operate in so-called hub and spoke system, which means that they have a hub through which they fly. So if you want to fly, say, from Odessa to Beijing, through Mao, you have to go through Kyiv.
Well, in the United States, they're using different, it's like worldwide hub system, but in the United States, it's more popular was like to make some several stop on one route.
For big airlines, it's still hub and spoke. Well, first of all, because you cannot have one hub, you know, for the United States, but usually they have 1 or 2 hubs. Most airlines, they do that. Southwest said, no, we'll do direct flights. So they learned, kind of, they looked at the demand side between mid-sized cities, not between large cities, but mid-sized cities. In the U.S., as you know, there is no really public transportation. It's buses. Trains are non-existent. Literally, like passenger train, there is no such thing in the U.S. Like there is just one which goes from east to west coast. That's it. So most people fly or drive, or take a bus. But the distances are significant, so yeah, like if you're a salesman and you have to cover a territory of, of Ukraine, basically, it's pretty difficult for you to kind of be constantly on the road, on the car. But, making a flight from Odessa to Lviv, or from Lviv to Donetsk. So this is the type of, this is the type of cities, or from Zhytomyr to Poltava for that matter. So if you need to get from Zhytomyr to Poltava, oh, you're fucked. There is no way. That's where Southwest was doing. So they said, okay, we need to kind of give these guys get into this, because we're going to be under the radar of large airlines which are serving major cities. There are still plenty of mid-sized cities which are not served very well. Again, going back to this idea, price-sensitive customers. Not primary, secondary airports. Why use large airports? Let's use smaller airports. Yeah.
Question, when did secondary airports come from if large companies didn't
No, they had flights. They had flights, but first they had the hub and spoke system, as I said. So if you needed to go to Urbana campaign in Illinois, you had to fly through Chicago, right? So things like that. So they still, they have small airports. They did have small airports. No frills meaning nothing extra. So it's like nothing fancy. No drinks, no food. It's just kind of basic stuff. Point to point, as I said, point to point versus hub and spoke. And this one is good. Why have that?
Often
Standardization. Of course.
Save on the repair expense.
On everything. On pilots. You just need one type of pilots. You need pilots who are trained in just one type of planes. You save extensively on the spare parts. You save time on cleaning and maintaining the aircraft, right? Because each time the aircraft comes in, you have to clean it, right? If you have just one type of plane, people can do it blindfolded because they know it. Because they don't have to use different, like it's 777 or it's 737, different types of planes. So a lot of, makes a lot of sense. And all of these, if you think about it, support this. So their key positioning, they're saying, okay, our positioning is we are a reliable, frequent flyer, cheap airline. That's it. That's our positioning. We're not telling you you're going to be having fun in the flight. We're not telling you we're going to be entertained. We are not promising you any good food. We're not promising you that you're going to be flying, from Chicago to New York. We're not promising you necessarily very convenient hours. What we are promising you is going to be cheap, quick, on time. That's it. That's our promise. And in order to support that promise, these are the activities, and these are the things that they're doing in order to support them. Just kind of to give you the illustration, there's a bit nicer way to illustrate it, right? So these are the key elements that support their strategy. So they say, okay, lowest fares, right? To the passenger, we are the cheapest airline. Since they have low fixed cost, and they have lowest fares, they have large volume. Large volume means high aircraft utilization, and they have high bargaining power with the suppliers. So both sides of the equation, large volume in terms of the customers, right? So and this is very important, because aircraft, each time you operate an aircraft, it's a fixed cost. It doesn't matter how many passengers you carry, most of the cost is fixed.
If you cross no mills, what?
I'll show you.
Actually, over to this case, low-cost airlines, IFRS agency, International Financial Reporting Agency, they have changed the standards. So now, when you have like your equipment or plants in a lease, you're obliged to capitalize those prices and depreciate in the future. So it's like all those companies for now, since 2019, will have fixed costs in a huge amount. So they will sunk.
No, they will not, because every one of them will have it. Right?
Actually, this has been done just to compare the results, like the airline companies, as they have aircraft, air shuttles in their balance, and depreciate to those airline companies who are taking their planes in lease.
Most of the airlines have their planes in lease. That's the problem.
Okay, so
Most of them, even the biggest ones. So, you know who the biggest aircraft lessee was in the world? Maybe still is.
no.
AIG, American Insurance Group. They owned, I think, about 50 or so % of world's aircraft. It's mostly leased. It's more efficient. For airlines, it's more efficient. I cannot go into details. I cannot tell you the exact figures for each of them. So some of them do buy it, some of them lease it. I don't know about the kind of the reporting standards, so cannot comment on this. But in general, so since we are on the page of kind of what Southwest does differently in terms of kind of a difficult industry, right? So one of the first premises, so low fares, how does it translate to the activities that they have? So it translates to higher aircraft utilization. It translates into higher bargaining power of suppliers, which lowers the fixed cost, because obviously the higher is the utilization of the plane, the higher is the distribution of that fixed cost on a per passenger basis. Right, which translates to higher profitability and reinvesting. No meals, very simple. You have no variable cost because you don't have to ask those passengers what do you want to eat. Nothing. You know, the answer is nothing. Then, by not offering meals, you set the expectation. So your promise, your positioning is very clear. People don't expect you to provide, high quality service. People don't expect high quality, meaning with frills, with extras. People don't expect you. You tell them up front, guys, you're going to starve. So unless you we're not offering food. So bring something along, right? But nothing is free. So in case you want food, we'll sell it to you.
If you want your salary, buy it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and it's additional revenue. So these are the mutually reinforcing activities that are consistent with their business model. In terms of dynamics, let's talk about this, the final the third view. So Schumpeter said that there are 4 sins that the organization can have that can influence its rise or decline, or mostly decline. Imitation, substitution, hold up, and slack. In terms of imitation, is pretty straightforward. Companies do imitate. And again, you're never protected from it. Biggest protection from imitation, patents. So that's what Apple is so good at. So you protect with patents whatever you can protect. It's funny, I actually didn't realize it until again I went to New York. Microsoft right now does the same imitates Apple in stores. So I didn't realize Microsoft had their stores like Apple.
Microsoft stores?
Yes, Microsoft Store. you'll be even more surprised, it's located just 2 blocks away from Apple Store on Fifth Avenue.
But what do they sell there? They don't
Microsoft
have
products.
Surface.
No, Windows Surface is very, very
So
good.
it's created like it's a very, very, very close imitation of Apple Store. Same glass, same glass facade, large sign of Microsoft on it, very light, very spacious. Same stuff, like they have this. It's just smaller. It's a lot smaller, obviously, but same lines of same tables, same consultants. Surface tablets, but they also put third-party products as well, so like Dells and Acers are also there, so laptops, because obviously they don't have enough Surface products. And yeah, there's all kinds of gadgets.
It's on also Google stores as well.
I haven't seen one, but yeah, I didn't realize that Microsoft is doing the same thing. So they realize that it's an important piece, I guess, of their hardware strategy. That since they now want to change and also want to be in that business, they need to promote it. Because this is something completely new to Microsoft. I mean, they've always been a software company. Apart from Xbox, they haven't produced much of a hardware. And so now what they realize is that in order to be there, in order to sell it to consumer, they really need to be in touch with the consumer physically. So I'm curious how that goes, but it was interesting to see. So this is imitation. Another threat, another sin, basically, is substitution, and there's again tons of examples, right? Video conferencing versus airlines, right? Airlines are partly or business travel as a business lost a lot of its revenues because of the video conferencing and then because of Skype. It's like, yeah, why would I spend, that's part of the reason why Concorde bankrupted. Why Concorde was not a successful product.
Because they crashed a lot.
No. Everyone crashed. I mean, Boeing crashes as well. Part of the reason was it was very inefficient because Concorde consumed tons of oil or fuel. Sorry. So the key value proposition of Concorde was to get from London to New York in whatever 4 hours, I think, or 3 hours. I think it's like 3 hours. Right. So who was Concorde aimed at? Like business people, right? So it's business people. So people who travel between city and the Wall Street, people who do deals. So mostly finance guys. But when the video conference was on, it's like, yeah. In many cases, why would I need to physically go from London to New York? I can call the guys. Here is the video wall in my nice office. I can literally see or almost touch them and feel them. So why would I, why would I pay?
Facebook avatar, you can
Yeah, exactly. So why would I pay $10,000, for a ticket on Concorde? Same stuff with digital photo and Polaroid, right? So again, Polaroid was so confident that nothing will happen, that people will always want paper photos. They were like, yeah, people will always want paper photos. No, they don't. Hold up. Happens in situations when you it's the hostage type of situation. That's when you can be that's when a business can be hostage or held hostage by its buyers or suppliers. So how is Coca-Cola produced? Who produces Coca-Cola?
Different companies.
Who produces Coca-Cola? Is it Coca-Cola?
No.
No.
For plants nearby.
Yeah, but do they belong to Coca-Cola?
I think so. No.
No.
Really.
No.
Coca-Cola plant?
No. These are called bottlers. So there's companies, there are a few of them, and they're bottling companies. Everyone thinks they're Coca-Cola, they're not. There are bottling companies. They're very closely tied with Coca-Cola. So, but they're not owned by Coca-Cola. They're owned by different people. So in Ukraine for a long time it was Coca-Cola Hellenic, so-called Coca-Cola Hellenic bottling. You may even have seen it on some of the bottles.
Well,
yes.
Pepsi is even more simple. They even license it.
I don't know about Pepsi, but Coca-Cola, So in a nutshell, Coca-Cola's key product is one thing: formula. What Coca-Cola ships is the formula. The bottling, so everything, the bottling happens by a third party, not by Coca-Cola.
Well, similar model has Philips already. Just tried to transfer. They don't produce almost anything except maybe a light bulbs, but everything else they just subcontract. Well, not subcontract. They just give the license to produce to everybody else. This brand of
Here it's a bit more complicated than that. It's not just licensing. So here the thing is that Coca-Cola can be held up by bottlers, right? So in the sense that they can stop kind of. If Coca-Cola does something wrong, they can stop shipping Coca-Cola, right? Which can kind of, but it's also vice versa, right? So Coca-Cola can also switch sides with the bottler. However, the bottler has big power here as well because they have the access to the ingredient.
Marvel and comic strips.
So it's a threat. It's always always have to keep in mind that the companies kind of. It's a good thing to have very close supplier relationship, but it can also become a threat to a company that if it's not managed properly, it can really damage. And Slack is very simple. I mean, Slack is relaxing. Slack is slacking on your business model. So, as an example, is saying, okay, we're doing fine, so let's maybe allow ourselves something that we haven't allowed before, so maybe relaxing our standards a little bit, this or that way. Maybe doing something, cheaper, maybe something else. So, and when the organization is just like with a person, if you think about it yourself, if you have a very kind of specific discipline of doing something, for example, of going to gym, and then you kind of on some day you're like, I don't feel like going, I'm probably going to stay home and relax. It's fine, right? But it's just one time. I don't feel well. But then you do it again and then again and then again, and then you slip. The same thing works with the organizations. So organizations may become kind of lazy. The organizations may become too self-confident, too self-assured, and like, okay, yeah, maybe let's buy, and I don't know, if it's for example, it's a Walmart, like Walmart executives, I don't know about now, but probably it still is. They usually traveled, if it was more than one person going to a city, they stayed in rooms of two for the sake of economy. So because Walmart is it's a discounter. Walmart is a retailer whose core motto is low prices every day. And by being a discounter, that's why Sam Walton created such a successful empire, is because there are these things that they are being consistent in, even the small stuff. So like, okay, if we guys are kind of low-cost retailer, each of our activities should be aimed at cutting the costs. Even such a small thing as business executives traveling to another city.
They could have stayed in the stores.
Could be. Yeah. I'm sure if
on couches.
I'm sure that it could be. It could have been the case in some situations. Yeah, just kind of you know it, but just to remind you, there are 3 levels of strategy, from corporate down to operational, and just kind of for the idea. Corporate level is when Google is diversifying into a completely new business. Business level strategy is improving kind of the exact product specific features, and operational strategy is improving very specific kind of technical things or something about the processes. And again, it seems like, you know, no-brainer. Just important to realize that those decisions require different types of information, and those decisions involve different types of core competences of people who make those decisions. So, last but not least, what else? Because I mean, today's session, I know that kind of I've been lecturing a lot. I just wanted to give you, to front load you, because the rest will have mostly, you know, casework. I think we're meeting on 17th, if I'm not mistaken. So most of our, you know, future sessions is going to be cases. I just wanted to front load you a little bit of theory. And as I said, you know, I'm going to send you just a few things to read if you want. In terms of what else is, so there is Blue Ocean strategy, and I'm sure, have you looked at it in your marketing strategy class?
No.
There are some, you know, it's an interesting idea, it's an interesting concept, basically, of taking the strategy canvas, and I think strategy canvas is a really useful tool to analyze the companies and to break down and to see whether, you know, first of all, on which dimensions the business is competitive or not with the other businesses. But the second is then to try to see whether other dimensions can be added or subtracted to create a new, you know, a new industry or a new model. The resource-based view, effectively, we kind of looked at it, and there are some important things that resource-based view focuses on. Mostly it focuses on resources in terms of their scarcity and appropriability. So whether the company can own the resources which no one else can, and the company has the access or can create the types of internal capabilities that are very scarce. And again, sometimes it's very useful also to add in the industry and company analysis, to add those elements, to add those instruments, and to think, okay, what resources do we have? How appropriable are they? So meaning how easy is it for others to kind of to imitate those resources or to get those resources? Because in some things like in some especially creative industries, that's a very important element. You can you know, if you appropriate and sign an exclusive contract with Taylor Swift, that's it. You know, no one else can appropriate that resource. Right? Same thing goes for movie industry. If you sign a contract with Steven Spielberg, there is no second Steven Spielberg. No one can replicate Steven Spielberg, and things like that. So in some industries, this becomes the paramount. So this kind of competition, everything depends on how you can appropriate the resource, or gold mines. Right? I mean, like, if you can appropriate, if you're the first one to find and appropriate a gold mine or a diamond field, that's it. You know, no one else can do it. So it's the only one. It's there. It's physically there. No one else can do it. So you appropriate it. So for some industries, for some companies, if you understand that the importance of scarcity and appropriability, then that's where the company should focus all of its key activities and attention. Marketing, sales, everything becomes secondary. Primary becomes the securing and utilizing scarce and appropriable resources. I think we were in a very good pace, and we're done. Any comments, questions, suggestions, anything? Because I wanted to make sure we finish on time. In terms of your time, first of all, I didn't want to abuse it. So before we go, anything that you wanted to discuss?
Should we prepare for the next class?
Yeah, I will send, as I said, I will distribute you I will distribute. I will distribute all of the cases actually, so you can do it at your own pace. So I will do two things. I will distribute you the cases, and I will put you into groups to do those cases. So in our next meeting, we'll have 2 case discussions. But again, you'll have all of the cases, so you will be able to, you can do it at your own pace. You can prepare all of them. You can prepare them on the go, whichever way works best for you. For the next session, yeah, it's going to be 2 cases. One more of a qualitative one. It's on the impact the strategy has on decisions of specific managers on their daily activities. And I think it's a very fun case. All you need to do is just to read, is basically to have 2 readings done before you come to the session. And the other one is going to be kind of qualitative and quantitative. So you'll need to do some, a bit, not number crunching, more of a kind of like use the figures to make your decisions in terms of strategic choices. Other than that, I think we're good. Okay, then thank you for bearing with me today for the whole day.
Thank you.
Hope it's not too boring, and I'll see you on the 17th.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye. Рыба. Селедка. А по поводу группы там
Не, это я просто в школе. Я просто в школе. Они уже. Да, они сами забили. Здесь? Ну, всегда подберут, или тебя здесь прям подберут? Или какой всегда? Блин, я не помню.
Все эти пожатия признали действительно полностью. Мужские рукопожатия признали действительно.
Женские? Нормально, да? Ну, нет, нормально.
Идем? Ты новый?
Давай. Нет, ну что, да, все сам.
Почему нет?
Кстати, а группам мы как будем делиться?
Я.
Окей. Все, тогда. Не, ну
Это меня норвежцы научили. Нет.
Вижу, ты там музыканты, и правда, ничего мне тут затевать.
Нет, ну они задали вопрос, вам нормально, что там поздоровались, а с тобой там не здороваются? Ну, мужчины. А говорю, нет, ненормально, это дискриминация. Он говорит, ну, наш менеджер, там Анна Мария тоже так думает, поэтому я мужчинам принципиально руки тут не пожимаю. Или если он пожимает, то у нас принято те, кто приезжает, то женщинам тоже. То есть, если, или со всеми, или ни с кем.
Нет, подожди, а якщо ти
У них
мужчині
культури.
пожимаєш руку, а женщине цілуєшся, це дискримінація?
Да.
А якщо ти женщине пожал руку, а з мужчиною поцілував, це дискримінація?
Это флирт.
Это юрист, это юрист. Он сейчас
А
переведет
хто це
внимание,
взагалі,
что
хто це визначав? Що це
Это
дискримінація?
нет, ну это...
Це знаєш, як фотка цього.
Мы типа гордимся тем, что у нас специально, по-моему, 27
Нічого, скоро прийдуть фашисти до власті. І все буде нормально.
Вот.
Ну, все буде як
Не, я, в принципе, даже замечал, но наша компания программисты. Понятно, что там девушек намного
Мало,
меньше.
да.
Да, и подходишь команда, сидит, ну там какой-то митинг приглашенный, начинаешь здороваться и понимаешь, что там сидит 7 ребят и одна девчонка. И ты со всеми поздоровался, а она вроде как вообще, ну реально...
Но это
То есть,
некрасиво.
когда еще какой-то есть там смесь, более-менее, ну, 30, ну, 30 на 70, там, 40 на 60, то ты, да, ну, такой микс. Ты поздоровался с половиной, там, или сколько, а целая группа, с которой ты не здоровался, это еще ничего.
Здоровайся, ты
А
знаешь.
когда
Поцелуй.
она одна, то получается, что реально обидел.
Не,
Ну да, красиво, женщины молчат, но это обижают.
Ну, так я сам заметил, я говорю, ну,
не руки
получается,
не
неудобно, но я
на
говорю,
рыбалку не взяли.
просто западные люди, они здороваются только тогда, когда знакомятся. А
Да
потом они
западные, мы
не-
не западные люди.
Ну, они
Мы
рукопожатные.
из русского мира,
это
так обычно.
юнисекс, то есть с женщинами тоже...
Та подожди, це запад, скільки то западного міра? Європа і Північна Америка. Що? Блін, а що робиться в решті світу?
Не знаю.
Якось ми тільки думали, ну, в Європі отак, значить, должно бути так.
А мы же на них ориентировались, наверное.
А в Саудівській Аравії, коротше,
А вообще поражилось, да.
журналістів розчленяють.
Это просто своя ситуация, да.
Да,
По последним данным.
як це називається, в консулаті. Які то, блін, руки?
Добре, бачите.
Щасливо.
Что заводит? Не могу понять, где я.
Тяжело один предмет весь день высидеть.
Да, да, особенно когда это чистая лекция, это вообще капец.
Хотя бы видео какое-то.
Я под конец что-то уже начал, как это, знаешь, мне казалось, что сейчас моргну и глаза обратно не открою.